Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Miles Trial. Today we are live again. Yesterday we had to rerun one of our episodes, but as of today, we are still pending the verdict from the jury for the MILESGUO trial. Just to recap a little bit for everybody, I believe yesterday the jury has requested for court transcripts of 2 witnesses. So it appears that they're still working through deciding on the verdict right now. And from the looks of it, as of yesterday, they're actually on some of the earlier counts, because as we know, there are 12 counts to this trial. The information that they requested, the court documents that they had asked for, were in relations to one of the earlier counts, which is the GTV private placement program. So with that being said, I think it's still going to take some time before the jury reaches a verdict. But I do have a sense that we might be seeing a decision made soon by the jury. So I think in the coming days, it would be very likely for them to have a result. And with that being said, there's not really been too much of an update, because the deliberation process is not open to the public, and the information that we do get outside of the deliberation has been very limited, because it had just been a lot of formality stuff in regards to the schedule. But so far, every day has been starting at 9:30 and ending at 5, kind of like some of the longer days that has been for the trial, but which is understandable, because the trial was originally scheduled to end on July 12th, and right now we are already on July 16th, which is actually just 2 days after the proposed date, because of the weekend, the 2 weekend days. But nevertheless, I know that the court has been very efficient in the way they are doing things, and we will for sure see a result coming in the upcoming days, and we will for sure bring the most up-to-date information to our viewers. So with that being said, I actually want to pull up a image for our viewers, because I think everybody's also wondering what the result might look like. So our team had put together a graph to kind of outline the different kind of possibilities that this trial may have. So if we can put that up, there we go. That is great. So it might look a little complicated, just because the 6 results, but only because there are 12 counts to this case. So there's quite a lot of possibilities on how this trial can end up. So starting from the left to the right, I mean, we have a not guilty on all counts on the very far left side, and a guilty on all counts on the right side. So these are 2 of the more extreme scenarios where we see Miles being not guilty on all counts, and also guilty on all counts, which is difficult to come to, because if you think about it, there are 12 jurors and they are deciding on 12 counts. So in the end, there are 144 votes, which is quite a number of votes that they have to vote in a certain way to get these results. So those I think are a little bit more extreme, but nevertheless, if Miles is found not guilty on all counts, then he will be released immediately, which is that is something that we are hoping for. To see Miles back out again, to see Miles prove his innocence in court. And to the other extreme, where if he is guilty on all counts, well, that is not the end, because as we know, in the U.S. judicial system, the defendant can always request for appeal to the U.S. Second Circuit Court of Appeals. So that is the 2 more extreme possibilities. Now let us go to a third possibility that I think is also a little bit extreme, which is a complete hung jury, because a hung jury means that they haven't been able to reach a decision. The jury,
like a unanimous decision.
Yeah, they are not able to reach a unanimous decision on these charges. And a complete hung jury means all 12 counts are hung jury, right? And that is also a little bit difficult to reach, in my opinion. And if that were to be the case, for there to be a hung jury, then the government may request for a retrial for the case, and which would probably take a few months for them to set up again. And there are a couple more possibilities when a hung jury does take place, where there's not a unanimous decision on all of these counts, which is they can talk about settlement and stuff like that, or the prosecution might throw the case out, and that's also a possibility. But right now, the most likely scenario is the retrial. So that is what we're going to focus on. And if you have on the left and right side of the hung jury, we have a different types of permutations of these possibilities. We have partially not guilty and partially hung jury. So in that case, the government may also request for a retrial because there are certain counts that have a hung jury where there isn't a unanimous decision, and there are counts that have already been proved not guilty. So that's why we know it would lie in the same results as if there were a hung jury. And then we also have a possibility of certain counts being found not guilty and certain counts where the jury decided that it was guilty, that Miles is guilty on, and then that would result in, of course, another appeal to those charges that the jury decides Miles is guilty on. And also, there would be the same case if Miles is found to be guilty and also on certain charges, and certain charges no unanimous decision by the jury, and then that will also result in the appeal for those charges that that Miles has been found guilty for. So that is just the number of possibilities and also the possible next steps to some of these possibilities for this case.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's more likely that because there are so many counts, it is very likely for it to be partially hung jury, partially not guilty, partially guilty,
right.
Somewhere along the lines of those permutations, just because it is a lot easier to reach those conclusions, because again, 12 jurors, 12 different minds, trying to process the information that is presented to them through the testimonies, and also the fact that there are just 144 votes in total throughout this whole deliberation process.
Right.
So it would be quite difficult to reach a unanimous decision on all 12 counts. At least that's my understanding of it. But whatever the case may be, we are staying positive because, at the end of the day, this is something Miles always says is everything is just beginning.
That's right.
And no matter what outcome that comes out, that is not the end. There is always something, there's always a next step. There's always something that comes after this. Say if Miles does come free, then that does prove his innocence in court in this trial, then I think there is still a lot to do on our mission to take down the CCP. So with that being said, I think today we also have a great number of content because I was just speaking with Jackson right before the show. There has been a very interesting turn of events prior to the closing statements, and I do want Jackson to kind of go over that part of the information as well.
Okay.
And today we actually dive a little bit more into the court transcripts for the closing statement, so we can kind of take a look word for word what Miles' legal team has brought up in the closing statements, and some of which I would say is beautiful language. It's very beautifully put in a way where you would pretty much grasp the idea of the case, and also not only that, it kind of counters a lot of the arguments that is being made by the prosecution team through some of the arguments for some of the counter arguments for the arguments raised by the prosecution team.
Right.
So Jackson, please take it away. I am very interested to see what had transpired prior to the closing statement.
Sounds good. Thank you, Saturn, and everybody watching. I'm personally very confident that we're going to win so big that this is a very crucial week, right? It's a very critical week. And with that being said, the fight continues. And here we go. So with that being said, let's take a look what happened before. This is on July 10th. Before the actual closing statement from Sid Kamaraju, which is Mr. Miles' attorney, the defense attorney. Something I want to bring up, because to give everybody an idea, is the closing statement from the defense side actually broke up into two parts. The first part was July 10th. The second part was on July 11th. Today we'll be diving a little bit more into what happened on July 10th. And here's what happened actually before the closing statement from Sid. Let's go to transcript page 5849. We'll bring it up to show you guys. There you go, beautiful, line 3. And I'll read a little bit for you guys, and then we'll dive in a little bit more to the actual language. So here we go. Now this language actually is from, as you guys can see on the screen, this is from our defense attorney, Scott Shurik. And here's what he said. He said, just as a background matter, the law, Your Honor, speaking to the judge, as we understand it based on Second Circuit's precedents, is that counsel, in quotes, have broad latitude. Okay, in inference, they may reasonably suggest to the jury during summation, which is the closing, that is United States versus Edwards. Okay, and they went over some of the numbers like 342, F3D, 168. And counsel are free to make arguments which may reasonably be inferred from the evidence presented That's United States versus Roland Zapata. Anyways, why do I bring this up? It's because the government's argument to the court, which is the judge, is that they didn't want the defense, which is Mr. Miles and our team, to be able to argue the fact that, or at least in our closing, that, hey, look at Yali, look at Mr. Yi, the one that's been coerced, that testified in court that they've been coerced by the CCP, the MSS, to file false claims, to have the entire nation, the CCP's entire nation, essentially the pressure on them to act in ways that are not true to what actually happened. And essentially, this is the part that our defense, Scott Shurik, wanted to essentially iron out before we actually start the closing. So with that being said, let's keep on reading a little further. Here we go. Scott continues saying, hey, Your Honor, as the court well knows, through the Fox Hunt strip, okay, Operation Fox Hunt is brought up once again. He says that the Fox Hunt strip, which is the defense strip number 1, it is aptly in evidence, okay, that the principal goal of the Fox Hunt initiative was to discredit Mr. Mr. Guo, which is Mr. Miles Guo, using multiple means, and that the MSS, okay, the CCP's Ministry of Security, State of Security, tasked a specifically formed group to that end to carry out the whole campaign of discrediting Mr. Miles Guo and going after him, and okay, and then it continues saying that the court heard testimony from the defense expert Paul Durant, who testified as to, among other things, the CCP's tactics in manipulating its citizens to accusing them of false or gradually exaggerated crimes. Okay, the court also heard testimony from Mr. Yi, which I referred to before. He testified that what the Chinese police did to him, not only detaining him in China and forcing him to sign false complaints to the U.S. authorities, including the FBI and DOJ, but also abusing the U.S. judicial system itself by causing false civil complaints and lawsuits to be filed on Mr. Yi's behalf here in the United States. Very important. Okay, I want to share this language with you guys, and I know I'm reading a little bit, but this is very important information that I wish I was more of a genius so I can have photographic memory, but But with that being said, a little bit more. Here we go. Mr. Scott Shurik continues. He says, next, the court also heard testimony from the government's witness, Miss Ya Li, which is the government's witness, also known as Mulan. Miss Li testified. Oh, thank you very much. Yep. Miss Li testified that her parents in China were contacted by the CCP and told to her to stop all of her Guo-related activities because they threatened national security, aka the CCP, right? Now, in addition, as part of the defense's good faith basis for being able to argue in inference that we request, Your Honor, there was 3,500 material produced by the government relating to Mulan, relating to Ya Li, after Ms. Ya Li's testimony was over in this case, which Ms. Li reported that she heard reports similar to the ones that Mr. Yi testified to, and the Chinese police approached people, and so on and so forth. So essentially, that was a quick little house cleaning that our defense wanted to make with the court, with Judge Torres, and so here is the actual decision. Right? Because if you guys take a look, as we're reading through this, multiple witnesses are actually mentioned. There's Mr. Yi from one of the defense's witness, Mrs. Ya Li, which is from the government's witness, is also very interesting. And now, with that being said, there's actually one more I'll read to you guys, and then we'll dig into the actual material. So this is on page 5854. 54. Let me take a look. Line number 2. Yep, 5851. Oh, actually, 5851. You know what? Let me read on a little bit further. There's actually quite a bit.
Yeah, but while you're looking for the spot, I just wanted to let the LFA audience know that we did experience some technical difficulties towards the beginning of the show. It seems that we were not able to go live for 10 minutes, but I'm glad that the show is going on now.
Yeah.
For the information that we touched upon during the beginning of the show, I will run through it again towards the end of the show. In the beginning, we just really gave an update on the deliberation process. Right now, we're still pending a result from the jury, and they're still working through coming to a verdict. And we also have just ran through a certain number of possibilities for this case, because there are 12 counts, and also 12 jury members have to make a decision on the 12 counts. So there are actually a number of different ways that this trial can potentially end, and what that would imply. And actually, I would just want to do that at the end of the show, just so you guys are able to be familiar with that as we get closer to the jury coming to a verdict. And I actually have just also made a graph, so if you guys would like to, you guys can actually just take a screenshot, because it's actually very clear on the the number of different outcomes, and also the implications of that. Jackson, you can return back to what you were discussing, and also can you just let the audience know again what had transpired, like what they were discussing, what the court is discussing.
Okay, so
this information.
Yeah, to give everybody an idea as to what we're talking about, is that this is on July 10th, before the court resumed the closing statements. Okay, and the argument from the government, because this is on basic housekeeping with the judge to make sure, from our side, Mr. Scott Shurik wanted to make sure with the judge that in court that we can actually make certain arguments. What can we say, what can we not say, kind of thing, because the government was arguing with the judge even days prior to the final witnesses were completely done. They were already essentially game planning for the closing statements by saying that, hey, guess what, we essentially, in all the words, they said that they do not want or wish for the defense team to be able to argue in their closing to say that, hey, all the witnesses, this person, that person, were all cursed by the CCP and whatnot, and in our defense, our rebuttal from Mr. Miles' team, essentially, this is the argument that I'm going over now as to what our response to what the government is asking the judge, right, to make a decision on. So with that being said, because the day before, the judge actually did not make a decision as to, oh, yes, you can, yes, no, you cannot. They left it open by saying, hey, we'll give you some extra time to the defense team to actually come back with an answer as to what the government is asking the court to rule. So essentially, that's what we're covering now. I want to point this out to you guys because this is very important, because it's going to make a difference, a huge difference on terms of how the closing is going to go and whatnot. And it's interesting because after sitting in court, what I have, as somebody like, for example, because I'm not a juror, but as somebody who is sitting in court to really see everything transpire in front of me, is what's interesting is that during the government closing statement, it's very apparent that even though through the cross-examinations during the questioning before the closing statement, pretty much all of their arguments were rebutted. All the arguments, our defense team did a fantastic job of going in very specific details on all the things that they were arguing. So what's interesting is that you can tell a difference between the closing from the government, closing from the defense. The huge difference is, from my perspective, what the government was arguing is, let's just say we're playing puzzle, right? It's a 1,000-piece puzzle. Okay, and then it's let's just say it's good versus evil, and then from my perspective, what the government is that they were painting a picture of saying, hey, don't look at here, don't look at over there, don't look over here, look over here. So they're nitpicking certain things. So for example, if the puzzle is good versus evil, and here's all the devil on the puzzle, for example, they want you to focus on the devil, right?
Right.
But so when the defense came in to tell the full picture, and as we saw from the whole picture, then you see, oh, this is good versus evil. This puzzle is not called just, whatever the name is, but you're able to see the full picture of good taking down evil and whatnot. But anyways,
right, and I think this was very similar to before Miles's witnesses had showed up in court, they also actually tried to limit certain aspects of the testimonies as well. So I think this is for a spectator of this trial, I think this is nothing new that we have seen before, where they're trying to limit certain things that the defense is trying to convey, which I think is counterintuitive, because they do have to present their side of the story and also the complete picture to the story, because it's quite honestly there's a lot of elements to consider, to say the least, when looking at the trial. So with that being said, I think we can go right on to the next part of the transcript.
Okay, sounds good. I'll keep continuing. This is from our defendant, Attorney Scott. After the whole...
which page do you want us to bring up?
Let's pull up 5850. Transcript 5850. We will continue around line...
Oh, actually, I just received notice that we have a new information.
Oh, nice.
That just showed up. So I think let's pull it up right now. This is a information now in the U.S. versus MILESGUO. Lawyers have been summoned to the courtroom. Guo not yet out of the holding cell. Could it be the second SDNY verdict of the day, or just a no from the jury? Now let us go down a little bit more. Judge Torres have received no from the jury. It says we have a verdict. Have the jurors brought out, please.
Wow.
And just now, jurors enter judge on count 1, guilty on count 2, guilty on count 3, money laundering, guilty count 4, guilty count 5, GTV wire fraud, private placement. The verdict is not guilty. Count 6, not guilty. Count 7, guilty. Count 8, guilty. Count 9, guilty.
Wow.
And do we have more on this thread, or is there no more? If there's no more, then let us return back Wow.
Okay, wow. What a turn of an event. Well, with that being said, reading this from Inner City Press on X, we will definitely have more information for everybody that's joining us on the show, possibly today or tomorrow, to confirm some of the language here, just to make sure this is indeed what happened. But with that being said, wow. Okay.
Yeah, that is a shock to say the least. Seeing so many decisions being coming out as guilty. That is that is. But again, that let us bring up the graph that we had a little bit towards the beginning of the show.
Okay.
I think this is a great time for us to show that information to the viewers, because again, this is what we were just talking about a little earlier. That it is not going to lean in one of the extremes.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a different combination of some of the different possibilities that we may have. So I think before we get the image up, I think I can just run through it based off of this right now. Essentially what we were discussing on the decisions being made before, right? It's the fact that it's difficult because there are 12 jurors and who are deciding on 12 counts. It is difficult for them to reach a unanimous decision on all 12 of these counts. So essentially what we're going to be seeing is the result like this we have seen just now.
Some form of a combination.
Right. And on one end, we do have a possibility that Miles would be guilty. It would be guilty on all counts, and then Miles would be not guilty on all counts. And right now what we are seeing is a combination of both, where there are guilty counts and also not guilty counts. But what I don't see right now is that there are no hung jury counts.
Yep.
So far, and there are actually just 3 more counts to this as well. We're only on count 9, because as we know, there are 12 counts.
Yeah. So we shall see if there are any other new updates to the rest of the counts. But it's very interesting because if you see count 1, it says guilty, which is 2 and because before the closing statements, the judge actually went over the RICO side with the racketeering, the definition of certain things, which some of the things we're talking about, we're going to get into. Let me take a look. So should we bring up the original picture to go over, or should we just continue?
I think we can continue with the content that we have for the show today.
Okay.
You can carry on. I'm gonna keep an eye on the notice to see if we have a verdict for counts 10 through 12, because as we just see, this is only for counts 1 through 9. We still have to see for the remaining 3 counts if what the results are for those.
Okay.
So yeah, please carry on.
Sounds
Jackson.
good. Well, carrying on, let's continue. All right, on page 5850, if we can pull up the transcript from 5850, and I'll continue with what our defense attorney, Scott Shurik, has said in court to the judge. Perfect, thank you so much. So after using Mulan's example, I mean, one thing that our defense attorney did really well was actually pull examples from not only the defense's witnesses' testimonies, but as well as the other side when it comes to the government's witnesses. So here we go. So in addition, as part of the defense's good faith basis for being able to argue the inference as we request, Your Honor, this is pretty much the defense essentially saying, hey, here, let me just continue, and then we can all connect the dots together. Here we go. Now, relating to Ya Li, okay, Miss Li's testimony was over in this case in which Miss Li reported that she heard her reports similar to the ones that Mr. Yi testified to, and that Chinese police approached people, and this is a quote from the 3500. Now, she heard similar reports where Chinese police approached people, instructed them to report to the FBI. This is all real, true, and the judge says, so if you could just justify specifically where you're getting that from as to what Mr. Shurik's talking about, Mr. Shurik or Scott continues by saying, yes, Your Honor, this is the 3500 produced by the government, I believe, on July 1st of this year. And again, that's further to Miss Li's record testimony where she testified that her parents in China were contacted by the CCP police, and the request was passed along to them to tell her to stop her activities. Okay. There's also, I believe it's partly in evidence that there are numerous of government witnesses who still have relatives in China who are all, of course, susceptible to this same coercion by the CCP as long as they're in mainland China. Okay, and for those among other reasons, we think it's entirely proper, based on Second Circuit precedents, for the defense to be able to argue that what happened to Mr. Yi, okay, that it is plausible and possible that has happened, okay, to other complainants, including the government's witnesses, victim witnesses, but not limited to just the victim witnesses. Your Honor, just for the record, this cites from 3500, and I just, let me see, Mr. Horton, the government makes their arguments, we come back, essentially I'll just...
Right, and also let me, sorry to cut you off, Jackson. Yeah. I did just see more information in regards to the verdict as well. If you can pull it up, I think if we can pull it up, I think we can talk about the counts that of Miles of them that is related to the trial. Okay. I think that will give the viewers more of an idea. And also, I have just seen another update, and it's the fact that sentencing will be on November 19th at 1 p.m. And also, the jurors have been is finished. The judge has said that the jurors may retire, and they will speak with them for a moment. And right now I don't see a decision made from Miles's legal team if they are going to appeal against these charges that have resulted in a guilty verdict. So let us see how this situation develops to see if there is a appeal coming from. Now, can we scroll to the top of the list? I would just like to go over these one at a time. So the first one is, the first count of this trial is a conspiracy to commit wire fraud, bank fraud, securities fraud, and money laundering. And the defendants for this, the accused for this count is Miles and also William Ye, and the maximum amount of maximum penalty is 5 years in prison. And the second one is wire fraud for GTV private placement program, and also same defendants, and facing 20 years. And then the third one is securities fraud for the GTV's private placement, and this one would result in 20 years in prison for the same defendants again. And fourth one, let's go down the list. Fourth one is wire fraud for farm loan program, for both Miles and William, and this is 20 years, and this is a maximum penalty of 20 years. And the fifth one is securities fraud for a farm loan program for Miles and William, and another 20 years, a maximum 20 years penalty. And then let us go down the list again. Now for the sixth one is wire fraud for G clubs, and same defendants, and also 20 years maximum for the maximum penalty. Eighth one is wire fraud for Himalaya Exchange, same 2 defendants, and 20 years as the maximum penalty. Ninth one, international promotional money laundering for both Miles and William, and 20 years in prison. And let's do the 10th one is international concealment money laundering, and this one is Miles and also William. This one is a maximum of 20 years. Let us go down one more time. And the 11th is unlawful monetary transactions for both Miles and William, and this one is a 10 years of maximum penalty. And the 12th one is obstruction of justice, and another 20 years as a maximum penalty. So let us go to the topic again one more time. Oh, I think, is there any more information from this one? Yeah, this is what I was referring to. The sentencing is on November 19th at 1 p.m.
Wow.
So that is another day to watch out for, and also for further information coming from Miles's legal team in regards to the appeal. Right? Because as we have discussed prior to the show, it is not the end all be all. When someone is found guilty in a trial, there is always a chance for the defendant to appeal to these guilty charges.
Yep.
So with that being said, let us see how the situation develops, and let us bring on the 12 counts again. I just want to go over on which one Miles is said to be found guilty on. I think he said he's found guilty on the first one, and also on count 2, count 3 money laundering guilty, count 4 guilty. 5 GTV wire fraud private placement, the verdict is not guilty, and 6 is also not guilty. So 5 and 6 are not guilty. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right. And let's see, count 6 also not guilty. 7 is guilty. 8 not guilty, and 9 is found to be guilty. And then the last 3, I don't see. I just only see it says more guilty and one more not guilty out of the counts 10, 11, and 12. So we will have to see the transcripts for today to know which one is not guilty for the last 3 charges. Most likely count number 12, because that is obstruction of justice. Yeah.
Involving only William.
Yeah, that one I think is it should be for my speculation, it should be the one that is not guilty out of the 3. So I mean, with that being said, it's definitely a surprise to all of us that we have that the jury has reached such a decision. But nevertheless, I think nevertheless, I think this is only the beginning. As what Miles has said, this is not the end or be all. There is always something we can do, because in the end of the day, we are within the American judicial system. So as long as there's always a chance for us to appeal, right? I think that is something that we have to just stay hopeful, and then just see what the next step is for Miles on this on this trial.
Yeah, and to our audience, to what Saturn and I were talking about earlier when we first started the show today, is that the fight continues despite it swinging, the decision swinging either way. The fight continues. The truth is the truth, and we believe in the U.S. justice system. And how do I say, throughout this whole entire experience, at the end of the day, at least for myself, I'm very confident that we're going to win. So big. But with that being said, like you said, this really goes to show that the justice system in the United States, despite what anybody says, there's still a process, a legal process of fighting for our freedom, fighting for what the truth really is. November 19th, 1 p.m. during the sentencing, I mean, with that being said, we're still going to confirm. You know, like what Saturn said today. We're going to go through the transcript of the newest updates today, figure out what is going on, and to bring you guys the most updated information, possibly tomorrow in another episode. But yeah.
But yeah, so far, like that is the current, most up to date information in regards to this trial. I'm still going to be keeping an eye on to see if there's any remaining information that does show up after the verdict has came out. But nevertheless, this is the results after such a long trial, right? This is already day 34 of the trial. And again, this is not the end of the journey.
Yep.
This is possibly just the beginning, and I think
absolutely
there is always something we have to look for on the bright side, right? I think a lot of the witnesses that have testified in this case, their testimonies are on the record, and for that alone, I think there is a priceless tag on that. For individuals who have testified to the fact that the CCP has coerced them, has threatened and forced them to file false reports in their testimony. I think that speaks out a lot, and also for some of the other individuals like George Higginbotham, who have testified to the existence of the CCP's efforts to repatriate Miles for his efforts to whistleblow against the Chinese Communist Party. I think the testimonies that is being brought up, and even for some of the witnesses on the government side, think about individuals like who have testified to the fact that the CCP has caused harm to themselves and also to their family. I think that is the most interesting thing, and also something that I think we can all walk away with from this trial, and that is the fact that the CCP, I think, it has shown up in the testimonies of witnesses in such an important case where the CCP is no longer, the actions of the CCP and the methods of the CCP, most importantly, is no longer able to stay invisible, because now we have people testify under oath that this is the truth, this is what happened to me, and this is the CCP's methods. So I think it not only kept this stuff on record, it also educated a lot of people on, like say people like me, people like you, who are not living in China, to be more familiar with the situation over there in China. What would happen if you were to stand up against the Chinese Communist Party? I think that is something that is priceless that we can take away from this whole trial. And I think in the end, that also speaks to a level of integrity for the Chinese people, because again, it is the Chinese people that is revealing the evils of the Chinese Communist Party from their methods, on how they have targeted their own dissidents, and these are methods that are probably more invisible to the regular Americans, because it only pertains to GTV investment, just like the witness Yi, who was an investor and then was forced to file these false complaints because he was an investor.
That's right.
So I think there's always something that to look on from the bright side. Now that this is I guess a more undesirable result from the support provided from the supporters of the NFSC and also the whistleblower movement. It's definitely difficult, but I think to look on the bright side, just looking at so many stuff are now on the transcript, I think there's always something, like I had just mentioned, it's always something great to walk away from. I think, and that would surely be of use somewhere down the line, I believe, because again, it is all under oath. It is the truth because it is a testimony in the court.
Yeah, I mean, like what you were saying, Saturn, is like at the end of the day, if for everybody that's followed the Mr. Miles for all these years, that despite all the little bumps in the road, Mr. Miles never lost faith in his fight, right? And to what you were saying earlier, I do agree, is that everything that's been testified in court is going to uphold in law here in the United States. And what's also very interesting or important is to know that, how do I say, this is an opportunity for us to now solve another problem. Instead of looking at this as some form of a defeat, which we don't think it is, which we believe it's not, because the fight is not over. Anything could happen before the sentencing of November. So much could happen. And this is why it's so important to follow Mr. Miles' trial, and through our shows and our programs, keeping up with the NFSC, because this is huge. This is a huge case. And I think people are going to look back and say, wow, I was a part of that. Or can you believe what happened? Or whatnots. But with that being said, hey, anything could happen. We still got tonight to go through the transcript to get an update for you guys. And yeah, the fight continues.
Right, and I think also you have to keep in mind, throughout this whole trial, Miles has never pled guilty to any of these charges. So I think, and understanding who Miles is as a person and his whole journey to fighting against the Chinese Communist Party, he is not someone who backs down from things that he doesn't believe in. And I think he is someone that is I can say is the chances of an appeal the chances of an appeal coming up is extremely likely. And I think because he is someone of great integrity and someone of great willpower, and also just looking at the way he carries himself throughout these 34 days, his energy, his whole entire mindset is extremely positive. He hasn't let any of his current situation disrupt him in any sort of way. I mean, just look at him physically, look at him mentally. I think he's in extremely good shape.
Yeah.
And I think in the end, this is just the beginning, like he said. There is much more to there's much more to do.
Yeah.
And the fact that he did not plead guilty in the beginning, I think it says a lot about and we can speculate to what decisions he might make when facing these guilty verdicts.
Yeah.
And I think with that being said too, I actually would like to pull up some of the information in regards to who Miles Guo is, because I think now is a perfect time to kind of bring us back to that fact, back to understanding who Miles is in the closing statements made by Miles's legal team. Just because I think even in times like this where Miles is found guilty on these verdicts, there are things that Miles has said and Miles has done and Miles has experienced that we just cannot take away from him, because that this is who he is. This is Miles. That he is someone who stands up and fought against the Chinese Communist Party and has faced so many dangerous situations because of the fact that he stood up against the Chinese Communist Party. So this is not the end all be all for the viewers out there. Wherever we may go, we just have to continue to stay vigilant. And in this fight to take down the Chinese Communist Party. So I would like to bring up the document, and it's paged 5975. It is. Now, before we have that up, I can just actually read from this real quick for our viewers. It says, so who is Mr. Guo? Well, like all of us, Mr. Guo has many dimensions. He's a father, he's a husband, he's the seventh of 8 brothers, he's a friend, he's a Chinese businessman that has built an enterprise in China that is massive. He's the founder and face of a pro-Chinese democracy movement that is a mass global following of thousands of fellow political dissidents, and he's a fugitive. Not from this government, but from the ruling party of one of the world's great superpowers, the Chinese Communist Party, or the CCP. Like all of us, Mr. Guo is many things, and to truly comprehend what happened here, you have to consider all of those parts. You have to look at the whole story, not just the part the government has asked you to see. The whole video, the whole document, the whole recording, the whole testimony, you have to look at the whole story, which is which is the reason why I think especially that the verdict came out to be guilty for certain charges. It's especially important to remember what Miles' legal team has said in the closing statement, and it's the fact that we just have to look at the whole picture as a whole to really understand the situation at hand. So that is the one I would like to point out, and it really explains the fact that emphasizes on the fact that Miles is against a totalitarian regime like that of the Chinese Communist Party, and that is the first and foremost thing you have to consider about Miles. And let us go to the 5980. This one actually, I just want to recap a little bit on the journey of Miles. I'm just going to read while our team is getting the page up there. It says, but as you heard, Mr. Guo threw himself into a new life in America. In 2017, he began to speak out against the CCP. He started with that Voice of America interview on April 19th, 2017. But the CCP, and then right after that it says, I'm going to skip a little bit. After that it says, but the CCP's reaction was swift and severe. Just look at the timeline of events around the VOA interview. On April 18th, 2017, PAX filed his litigation against Miles Guo in New York. The following day, China announced it filed a Interpol red notice seeking his arrest. that's the same day that the VOA interview was cut off abruptly, right as Mr. Guo was criticizing the CCP. So I think from this alone, you can kind of get a sense of how the actions of Miles has triggered a string of reactions from the Chinese Communist Party. And then just a little bit after that page, on page 5981, it says, you read how on May 2017, the CCP dispatched that team of undeclared Chinese agents to coerce him to return to China. And you saw in the translation of the calls and meetings between Mr. Guo and those Chinese agents, you heard the deal the CCP was offering him to be quiet. You can have your family back, you can have your money back, you can have your life back. But you know what happens next? Mr. Guo turned that down. He kept going, kept criticizing the CCP, kept speaking out publicly, and the CCP kept going too. So you kind of really see these two sides of this situation as well, where Miles is speaking out against the evil of the Chinese Communist Party, and also at the same time the CCP is retaliating against those actions, because again, why would the CCP want to have those information, their own dirt on them out there, right? And just think about and also just think about why they would want to silence Miles. Think about what happened a little bit later, right? Because Miles exposed the CCP's plan to release the COVID-19 bioweapon through the plan 13579 that Miles has whistleblown to the world. And if you really consider the severity of the COVID-19 pandemic and think about what could have been done to prevent that, and how important that piece of intel must have been, and how top secret it was, based on the results it has gotten for the Chinese Communist Party, you can imagine the dangers that Miles was facing. I mean, right after he whistleblew the plan 13579, his boat was remote controlled by the Chinese Communist Party.
That's right.
And it was just going ballistic.
One attack after the other. You can. So here's the thing, which goes back to some of the points we've made in our past episodes, is that if the things that Mr. Miles Guo blew the whistle on in regards to the CCP, if none of them were true, why would the CCP, invest this much energy, effort, manpower, you name it, to target him, to discredit him, right? To create false images and what stories of him, and to go after him via lawfare and everything else we're seeing today. So, I would say, the viewers, everybody that's following our show, please take all of this into consideration, is that this is a fight that's bigger than all of us, and something that, for example, analogy like a roller coaster, right? We're just going through little bumps and loops as we are on this ride together through this historical year. And with that being said, that when it comes down to the roller coaster, there will always be a time for us to come back to home base. So I think in terms of the landing, we shall see. But with that being said, we're not discouraged. This is just the beginning, like what Saturn is saying, a famous line from Mr. Miles. The fight will continue. And talk about a historical year, huh?
Right.
My God.
And I think also another thing I want to point out actually is, I might not pull out the documents for this because I know we just have 10 minutes left for the show, but I think we also have to reiterate the fact that a lot of these entities, especially like the Rule of Law Foundation, they were pretty much set up, and a lot of their actions were because for the cause of taking down the CCP and protecting those dissidents who are standing up against this totalitarian regime. Because as what we could see from Miles, we really could get a sense of the danger that Miles is in. And another thing I also want to talk about is the fact that just because Miles is found guilty today on these charges, I think another thing we also have to consider is that the fight to take down the CCP is not going to stop just because we are the new federal state of China, and we also are the Chinese whistleblower movement. So we see that here also expressed in the closing statements. It says, a movement was born, the whistleblower movement, a movement to tell the truth about the CCP, to wake up the people of China about the truth about the corrupt government that ruled over them. Because that's the thing, the government wants you to believe that there was an enterprise here. You know what, they're right, but it's not a racketeering enterprise, it's a political one. A political enterprise of people banded together to bring down one of the world's most powerful governments, and that's what they set out to do. They started setting up the infrastructure to help carry that movement forward. So I mean, Jackson, just thinking about the events you have attended in the past year, the America Fest in Phoenix, like how effective do you think we were in that event by educating people and exposing exposing the Chinese Communist Party in front of so many people.
Huge. From my personal experience, being at America Fest, like for everybody that follows us, Mr. MILESGUO on the screen, I'm telling you guys, like if you guys can already feel the energy, the synergy from everything Mr. MILESGUO has done leading up to all these years, it is on a completely different level being here in person, at the office, in the studio with Saturn, with everybody, being at MFest and everything. It made a huge difference. Roy, Isla's speech on stage. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps talking about this. It's like, it's a huge difference. We met amazing people, and it really goes to show you that I believe, from my observation and personal experience thus far, this entire year, talking about it being a historical year, but at the same time, so many people have, 13579 alone, this one thing, this one item alone, if you guys have followed us long enough to know what 13579 is a bioweapon plan from the CCP to unleash this bioweapon on the world as we know it today, COVID-19, right? And not even talking about the vaccine disaster that's on the horizon. This issue can no longer be ignored. This issue can no longer be ignored. From all my personal experiences with everybody that was there, once they learned about the 13579, once the American people, they found out, they say, okay, they're going after us, not just financially, economically, or the whatnots, but they're going after the livelihoods of our kids, of our family, of the future generations. It's really struck a chord in a lot of the American people that we had experiences with, and especially all of our work thus far. We have live streams, we have videos, everything has been documented. We don't have a director behind the scenes that says, oh, do this, that. This is organic, this is happening in real life. And
the whistleblower movement, this sound not just Miles himself. We have plenty of chapters around the world. This is an international movement to rise up against the Chinese Communist Party, to expose the Chinese Communist Party.
That's right.
So I think like what you put it in the beautiful terms that this is much more than just one person.
Oh yeah.
This is a global effort to take down the Chinese Communist Party.
Global effort, and the CCP is not going down without a fight, but neither are we. And June 4th, 2020, when that day came, when Mr. Miles was, on his boat underneath the Statue of Liberty, June 4th, 2020, that was the beginning of, you can go as far back as 1989, but still 2020, June 4th, that marks the absolute end of the CCP, my personal opinion, and I feel like the best is yet to come.
Right, and actually, I think, one of the very interesting parts of the closing statements made by Miles' legal team is really just the last segment of it, and I want to bring that out right before the show ends. Let me just read it before we have it up there on the screen for you guys, just so for the sake of time. It says that Miles talked about how in this country we have you, and that's specifically true for Mr. Guo because you are to be a jury of his peers to determine his innocence. He gets you reviewing the evidence, looking at all the angles. He gets you using your common sense and asking, does it make any sense? He gets you applying the critical eye to the government's proof that is required by law, and he gets you using your best judgment to decide this case. He gets you. And ladies and gentlemen, I have to say, if you do all those things, apply the law that Judge Torres has given you to the facts that you have heard during this trial, there's only one verdict that you could reach that's consistent with justice, and that's that you send this man home, that you send him back to his family, that you send him back to his friends, and that you send him back to his fight. Thank you. I think the very last portion of that is something that really caught my attention because it really speaks to the fact that him returning to a fight, right? Him returning to a fight, him returning to his friends, him returning to his family. And after seeing the tremendous support Miles has received from the supporters of the whistleblower movement, the Chinese whistleblower movement, that have attended the trial each and every day, and the number of people that continue to grow in each and every day, you could really begin to sense that the fact is you can really begin to get a sense of that final sentence. And really, it also speaks to the fight that he is returning to, because let's face it, this is not a fight just for Miles himself. This is a fight for everyone.
Millions of people.
This is a fight for everyone.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's. I mean, I'll say this is that throughout all these years, all the actions and everything else, I say, were all the actions, what's the word? How do I say? The word is like, actually, I'll maybe see it for the next episode. I'll see it for the next episode once, we have a little bit more confirmation through. I'm going to dig into the transcript a little bit more. But, actually, all the actions are they, is everything conventional? In terms of all the actions that led up to this point, I say it may not be, because we are going up against one of the most evil regimes that has a printing press that can print money at will to assert the influence, right? Look at they spent over $1 billion to just to disrupt to stop June 4th, 2020. We're talking about, to our current planet, one of the most evil regimes. We're not going up against, any one person. Like what you were saying to me, like this is the power of a nation that has, but with that being said, we can literally be the generation of men and women to bring freedom, democracy, freedom of speech, religion, rule of law, true rule of law, you name it, to the Chinese people for the very first time in history. So this is a huge fight. This is not something that can be taken very lightly. And through my experience at the trial, Saturn, this is historical to say the least.
Right, and I think I know like that what the verdict is for this trial has come out, and I do want to say that we pray, and we will always continue to pray for Miles and also all the people around the world, all the Chinese people that are still within the system of the Chinese Communist Party, and also the fact that I still believe Miles can still has a chance to prove his innocence in the because of the way the American justice system is set up, the due process of how the court trials are proceeding. And so I think with that being said, this is the end of today's episode. I know it has been a very long journey for this Miles trial. Then it has been taking place for 34 days now. And I think, tomorrow, like you said, we might have one more episode just to kind of wrap up on everything. From what I have seen, there are no more updates currently for today. And with that being said, I still hope that Miles can prove his own innocence in court, just like the fact that he has never pled guilty prior to at any time during this trial. So with that being said, I want to thank each and every one of our viewers for tuning into our show today, and also for the past 33 episodes of the show. It has been a long journey to cover this trial, because it has been taking place for quite some time. I think with that being said, I also want to thank Jeremy for giving us the opportunity to cover the trial on the LFA TV channel, because this is such a great opportunity for everybody to see the testimonies on Miles's witnesses. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching for the show today, and we will be back for tomorrow, hopefully with more information. God bless.
Yep.